Hello, my name is Keshwani. That's Keshwani, Keshwani. We are here because we want to prepare for SAT. We have been solving SAT grammar questions out of this book here, the official SAT study guide. If you do not own this book already, purchase one immediately. You're going to need it. The problems that we are about to solve are the ones that you will find on page number 774. Please turn to it. Page 774, and today is our lesson number 31. These are a set of 11 questions, as I always remind you when we get to this particular section, even though on the top of the section it says 35 questions, but these 35 questions are made up of 3 different types of questions, and therefore there are 3 different difficulty scales being used here. There are a set of 11 questions in the beginning, and therefore the first 3 or 4 are easy. That is, what you see there, the first 4 questions that we see on page number 774, they are easy. As you turn the page, in the first column on page 775, those are medium questions, and in the right hand column, in the second column, those are hard ones. Let's get going. Number 1. So on a scale of 1 through 11, we are doing the first 4, the easy ones. It says, Mr. Chung would like to retire. Mr. Chung would like to retire. Good for him, but retirement is unable to be afforded by him. But retirement is unable to be afforded by him. As you can see there, it's bloody awkward. It's bloody awkward because it is written in what is known as passive voice. Our job, good writing, requires that you avoid passive voice as much as you can. Passive voice is only to be employed when it is absolutely necessary. Instead of saying, but the retirement is unable to be afforded by Mr. Chung, it will flow much better if you were to simply say, Mr. Chung would like to retire, but is unable to do so. Voila, that's it. He would like to retire, but is unable to do so. Or better yet, he would like to retire, but he is unable to afford. He's unable to do so because he can't afford it. You get the idea. At this point, I forgot to say it again, and I almost always forget to remind you in the beginning. Your answers should be covered. Do not look at the answer choices. Cover your answer choices with one hand. Have the pencil handy in the other hand, have the pencil ready in the other hand, and make the changes. Now we're going to lift our hand, and we're going to pick the answer choice that comes closest to it. That's all it is. There is going to be one answer choice that's going to jump at us. The one that comes closest to it, that's the answer. There is no point in reading A, because A simply repeats what is stated in the sentence itself. So let's start with B. B says, Mr. Chung would like to retire, but he cannot afford to do so. There you go. But he's unable to afford, but he's unable to do so. There you go. B is our answer. But he cannot afford to do so. There you go. He would like to retire, but he cannot afford to do so. Let's see what C says. C says he would like to retire, but he's unable to afford that. No, that's a little awkward. And C and D and E don't even start out with Mr. Chung. We have not made any changes here. This part we did not touch. The changes that we made was here, which means our sentence must begin with Mr. Chung, and D and E do not. And C is a little awkward. The answer is B. Let's go to number 2. I don't know how to pronounce that word. Usuri tiger. Okay. The U tiger, a relative of Bengal tiger. I'm very touched that they're related, but it doesn't actually do anything as far as the sentence is concerned. Just ignore it. That's not the juicy bits. That's not the juicy bit. The U tiger has been described as the strongest tiger. Now, had that been the end of the sentence, this sentence would have been perfectly fine. This sentence, there's nothing wrong with it. certain kind of tiger is described as the strongest tiger. It's fine. The sentence is fine. So far, so good. There's nothing wrong so far. And also, well, goes on to say, and also the most, and not people, and also the most peaceful of them. This is the part where we have trouble here. And also the most peaceful tiger here. Problem here is that we are stating two ideas. In the first part of the sentence, we are stating the fact that he is the strongest of the tiger, and therefore logic would dictate that the second part that we are studying there, the fact that he is the most peaceful of all tigers, they're contradictory. One does not expect such a thing. One does not expect the strongest tiger to be the most peaceful one. So we try to convey the idea of contradiction. We are trying to convey the idea of contrast, and therefore these two words will not do it. You tiger has been described as the strongest tigers, and yet, and is fine, and not also, but and yet is the strongest one, and yet he is the most peaceful one. Cross out the word also, and we need the word yet to make the contrast that we need. Let's go through the answer choices now. Lift your hand and see what happens. B says not only the strongest tiger. No, that's not what we said here. The only change that we made was to cross out the word also and replace it with the word yet. That's the only change we have made. And anything that makes any other change is no good. So B is no good. C says the strongest tiger, at the same time it is the most peaceful tiger. No. At the same time, we need the word yet. We need the contrast. At once the strongest tiger. No, that it doesn't start out. D does not start out the way we want it. It has to start out with the strongest tiger. We have not made any change here. That's not good. And E says he is the strongest and yet the most peaceful of all tigers. Most peaceful of tigers. Answer is E. The U tiger has been described as the strongest tiger. Has been described as the strongest. Oh, we don't need the word tiger. He has been described as the strongest and yet the most peaceful of all tigers. Well, they don't say all tiger, but of tigers, of all tigers, that is. The answer is E. Let's look at number 3. Sometimes if the questions are too simple and if you try to explain it too much, it defeats the purpose. Like most new resident. I'll tell you what. Before we do number 3, let's do another example here. Here's an example for you. Like most kids. Now, as soon as you hear like most kids, what do your ears expect to hear next? Like most people. As soon as I say like most people, you expect to hear somebody's name. Like most cities, you expect to hear a name of a city. Like most cities, like most large cities, and then you expect to hear a name of a city. Like most large city, London is very crowded. You understand? We expect to hear the name of the child here. Like most kids, Michael, or rather, let's not do the change right now. Like most kids, here's the sentence. Like most kids, bucket of chocolate excites Mike. As you can see, this sentence does not flow very well. As soon as we hear, as we just said, as we both agreed just now, that as soon as you hear like most kids, our ears expect to hear the name of a child. Like most kids, who are we talking about here? Like most kids, Mike, instead of saying bucket of chocolate excites Mike, it should say like most kids, Mike is excited. by the side of a bucket of chocolate is what I meant to say. The side of a bucket of chocolate. There you go. Mike is excited. So like most kids, Mike is excited by the sight of a bucket of chocolate. Not a bucket of chocolate excites Mike. That does not work well. We need the name of the child next. So here, of course, a bucket, like most kids, this is our first part here, number one. Like most kids, Michael is excited by, as you can see, this is passive voice again. He's excited by, but here, passive voice is required here. He's excited by. Now let's look at the sentence. Now let's look at the sentence the way they give us. Number 3. And let's see what happens. Like most new residents, well, at this point I want to hear somebody's name. Like most new residents, so and so is confused by the streets, or confused by the street sign. Like most new resident, he seems to be lost on the first day. Not whoever he is. We need to expect somebody's name. We need to expect a person to be mentioned next. Like most new resident, it says the town's winding streets confuse Curtis' family. Town's winding streets confused Curtis' family. Town's winding streets confuse Curtis' family. That's not it. We need the family's name mentioned next. Like most new resident, Curtis' family was confused by the town's winding streets. They were confused by the town winding streets. As I have mentioned several times in the past, if you've been watching these videos on a regular basis, today is our lesson number 31. If you have watched the first 30 videos, on a number of occasions I mentioned the fact that my writing on the blackboard is very atrocious, and I really don't care about that. And the reason that I give you all the time is because I'm assuming, I'm taking it for granted that as you're doing this problem, you have the book in front of you and you're reading the problems with me. If you're reading the problem with me, even if you cannot read my handwriting on the blackboard, you know exactly what the sentence says because you're reading the sentence with me from the book, which is why I take the liberty of being a bit sloppy. Do you understand? That was it. That was the end of that page. That was the last question on the page, number 4. And that's it. I will see you tomorrow. We'll continue with the next page, where we'll do the medium and the hard questions of the set of 11 questions. Okay? Bye now.